Y'all, today we need to talk about an iconic set of spells that are next to be updated in Wizard101. And of course, I'm talking about minion spells. We have a confirmation from the devs that a minion audit is on the way. And we already saw in the Darkmoor level 180 update, they're done auditing shadow spells and lore spells. It's safe to assume that minions are going to be updated very soon now. If y'all don't know, minions are in a very, very weird spot. They haven't been updated in PvE in several years, and they're also fully banned in PvP because they were very, very unbalanced, especially some of them were when spammed. So since we can expect a minion audit soon, I thought I would talk about all the ideas I've seen from the community on how they would make minions even better in 2025. And I also wanted to talk about all the things that are already in the game that could really be the starting point for the devs when they do this minion audit. I think if Wiz listens to the feedback from the community, we could see minions be better than ever before in the 15 years that this game has been out. So let's start right off with the suggestion from the community that I've seen the most, and that would address the big issue with minions. I would argue the biggest problem with minions is that after you cast them, you have very little control over what they're gonna do. Now, Wiz is somewhat of an RNG game. Could you ever completely dictate what a minion could do? I sincerely doubt it. But let's take the fire elemental, for example, right? This minion is very versatile. It could use sprite, it could use elf, and it could even trap. But let's say that your opponent has a shield. You definitely don't want a trap because the trap will just get consumed by the shield. Essentially, you want an overtime. Let's say that you have a trap on the enemy. You really don't want to see the fire elemental use a fire elf because overtimes are bad with traps. Let's say you have very little HP. You don't want this minion doing anything offensive. You want it to be spriting you, which is the healing spell that fire elemental can do. The lack of control over minions is definitely a big limiting factor, and what a lot of people have suggested is when this minion audit happens, they want to see some level of customizability in terms of what the minion can cast. Now, the visuals you're about to see are from Christina Frostscorch. They're in the official Discord. They make all kinds of really cool spell ideas, but they suggested in the Wizard101 Discord that they would love to see maybe spell elements or other ways to customize minions so that they could basically have a base version of the minion and also versions of the minion that have certain cards grayed out, meaning they can't cast it. Let's take the Mandra minion, for example, right? This is a picture of all the spells that a regular Mandra minion could use. And then the suggestion from the community anyways is that you could have a way to customize it so you have like a brute Mandra minion, as in it only hits. You have a power-up Mandra minion, as in it only uses buffs. We actually already see a version of this with Cyclops minion. Basically, this is the only minion, as far as I'm concerned, that you could actually customize with spell element. And basically the way this works is, right, the top path, it seems to be one set of spells and the bottom path is another. And while yes, this customizability is already in the game, it's really cool, I don't really think the customizability follows any direction. Like, you don't expect the Cyclops minion to act in any way that's fundamentally different than the ally. I would argue that minion definitely hits more and the ally definitely tends to like do weird little things like bubbles and like a spell called Yellow Fire Off more. But I'd love to see a pattern of behavior with spell elements in terms of minions, right? I'd love to see a version of a minion that doesn't hit, so it doesn't consume buffs that you already have out. They're definitely building this identity already around every single school. If y'all don't know, in 2025, every school has 3 hanging effects it can leverage. Fire, for example, is a dot, trap, and healing school, so it'd be really cool if the customizability of those minions went down each of these 3 directions. I think that would be a really cool way to use spell elements, especially with minions. Now, the other suggestion that I've heard a lot that I really hope that Wiz takes seriously, it's a conditional that's also attached to minion. Now, I think conditionals are kind of a misunderstood concept, or at least little understood concept in the casual PvE experience. But what I mean by conditional is a spell will do one thing, but in certain circumstances, it'll do another thing, right? There's a lot of spells that do this. Sunbird, for example, it does 280 damage, but if you have an overtime on your opponent, it gives up that overtime and does an explosive 615 damage. I would love to see minions do that. Now, Christina also came out with this really cool idea, which is the idea that you could just summon a minion with the minion spell, but it would be cool if they were updated in a way where they do something different if you already have a minion out. Right now, there's no real reason to summon a minion and then have another summon minion card in your deck at all, unless the minion dies and you gotta replace it. But this idea is really cool, right? This card, it would either summon a fire elemental, or if you already have a fire elemental, it would do a double dot that does 780. That's a very cool idea. This ice elemental, it either summons a minion or it does damage if you already have a minion out for 3 pips, right? And because conditionals tend to literally reward you for doing other things that cost pips, these could get very, very powerful. It's not actually beyond reason for a 3-pip spell to be doing 500 damage even on an ice, because you need a minion out for that to work. Now, while I love that idea, the other way they could take this is to make the actual summoning of the minion cost less pips if you have a certain condition met. I think, for example, a 3-pip minion, very, very hard to justify, especially early game. And then by the time you get in a late game, yes, you can get 3 pips very easily because you get things like extra bonus pips starting off, you get power pip chance, right? 3 pips isn't hard, but then it's a little bit underwhelming. It would be really nice if you could summon a fire elemental for less pips if a certain condition is met. For fire, it would probably have to be something related to having a trap out, a heal out, or a dot out. But other schools could obviously have different hanging effects, make the pip cost of their minions less. I'd love to see a world where Storm can summon a 1-pip minion for having blades up because it's a blade heavy school. Maybe Life can summon like a free minion by giving up heals. Like, that would be a really cool concept that could be fleshed out very easily in PvE. Now, while all of these ideas, I've seen them come straight from the community, even visualized very well from the community, as y'all can see, I actually think Wiz has a very good thing that they have going for them with a minion audit in the future. And that's a fact that they already have a full-fledged system that has actual minions in it that are actually updated based on the current logic of the game. Now, a lot of people don't know this because they don't do Beast Moon, but certain spells in Beast Moon are very minion focused. And one feature that I would love to see them take from Beast Moon, because I think this would actually make PvP or PvE very interesting, is the Afterlife mechanic. A lot of people don't know how this works, so let's look at an example. Harvest Spirit. You get this if you level up your life drake by 3 levels, but you could actually see this on a lot of beast form. But how Afterlife works, right? That's what this little heart symbol is on Harvest Spirit. Basically, it's an effect that happens after the target dies. So how Harvest Spirit works, right? It'll basically do an afterlife on a target, and after the target dies, it'll give 100 blade to everybody out on the field. This spell also happens to hit for 150 damage, which is why it's 3 pips, but I'm gonna assume that Afterlives would not need to be 3 pips. They could be 1 or 2 pips. But the idea of an effect happening after a target dies, it's pretty much not really anything that exists outside of minions, because if you just kill your opponent, who cares what happens after they die? The battle's over. But minions, obviously, a battle can continue after a minion dies, right? Why do I really like Afterlife effects? Because 1, they could be used on opponents. They could also be used on your own minions, right? There's different, like, there's a variability to it that I really like. And also, because for an Afterlife to really work, you need a minion out, it could be another one of those things that you could justify adding into the game, doing some really crazy stuff, but because you actually need a minion out, you can make it a little bit more powerful per pip, right? You could have a 2-pip Afterlife effect that does way more than you could normally do with 2 pips on a fire. And considering 2 pips on a fire can literally do crazy things like we see with Fire Off, this could do like over 300 damage base, or if you can clear shields, right? There's a lot of ways to do damage right now. But imagine you could do even more damage, or maybe you get a really powerful utility for your own minion dying, or for killing your opponent's minion. I think it's actually very likely that they're gonna go down that route, especially because the way Beast Moon works, some schools are like minion heavy schools, some schools are minion punishing schools, some schools have a little bit of that overlap. So you might actually be able to see them do that and then tie like different Afterlives into different schools, and then tie it further into the whole dual schooling that they're doing. You can have minion schools, minion countering schools. You can see schools that counter minions with certain Afterlives. Certain Afterlives could be on your own team. Afterlives could be on your opponent's team, right? The options are a little bit endless with that. I would love to see them flesh that out, especially now you could have like a scenario where you could have like big hits that also do an Afterlife, right? It doesn't just have to be a 1 or 2 pip thing. They can attach it on the hits as well. It would really give them, in my opinion, room anyways, to add even more spells that do new things. Because let's face it, nowadays, especially when you look at spellments, you're starting to see repeats very early, right? Fire Elf, they use spellments essentially to make it a shield countering school, but Hellefin also counters shields with spellments. Fire King Art also counter shields with spellments. I think actually fleshing out minions would allow Wiz to stop repeating themselves when they add spellments. While yes, I do understand why a 4-pip trap counter versus a 10-pip trap counter are fundamentally different. Obviously, the pip cost will make... they're different spells. The repeat of what they counter isn't necessarily a bad thing. Also, let's not forget, they counter traps in different ways, right? While that is obvious, I do think sometimes Wiz goes a little bit too overboard. We've already seen some of the Darkmoor spells literally repeat things that we've already seen. We've seen Shadow Enhance spells. Just take a utility that a 2 or 3 pip spell does, and then they add it to a Shad spell. But I think they're already running into that problem because there's only so many combinations you can make within the certain things that a school counters and the certain things that a school leverages. But I would love for minions, especially summoning minions, to be tied to certain schools like Myth. I think is an obvious starting point, and then countering minions to be tied to certain schools. I guess the starting point for those would be Life and Fire because they counter Myth. Right, doing that and then tying it into hits that also do Afterlife stuff or hits that also summon minions, I think it would be a great way to avoid what they were doing, where they're repeating certain effects a little bit too much to my liking. But yeah, y'all, I do think a minion audit, I obviously we don't have an actual timeline on this, but it could be as soon as the spring update or the summer update. I feel like it genuinely has to be very, very soon, because I don't understand what else they could possibly have to audit other than minions if they want more and more spells to like flesh out. But let me know what y'all would like to see. Do y'all like the idea of customizing minions? Do y'all like the idea of minions being either stronger under certain conditions or lower in pip cost under certain conditions? And what do y'all think of the Afterlife effect that we already have in Beast Moon? Do y'all think they could tie that into a bunch of different schools and make minions even crazy? I think in 2025 minions could be totally different, totally fun. It could make PvP and PvE way different, way more fun and customized. So hopefully they take a lot of suggestions seriously. Obviously, I didn't cover every suggestion that anyone has ever had on minions, so let me know how y'all would change minions if y'all could control the minion audit in the comments. I look forward to reading all y'all's comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome, y'all. See y'all soon. And yeah.